I know we've all been in this situation. You got a game coming up tomorrow, or it's coming up soon this weekend, and you're looking at your prep materials and thinking about everything you have to bring to the table. You have some kind of important story moment, a really cool ambush, or a conflict you want to resolve coming up, and as you look at your empty battle mat out on the table, you're only wishing that maybe you could add some terrain or things to make it more dynamic and give things for the players to interact with and really add to the story you're trying to tell in that moment. But whether it's you don't have enough time to wait for shipping, you can't be bothered to spend exorbitant amounts of money on terrain pieces, well, today I want to show you my solution involving just a few materials and something everybody has lying around the house. So if you want to know everything you need to have, or everything I have here, because you want to kind of grab everything and then follow along, let's go through it really quickly. I am going to do some speeding up and some chopping up of the video so you don't have to watch the entire process, but we will cover all the steps and any tips or tricks or different things you might be able to do that I've figured out in the meantime. So for starters, we have one bigger jug of black paint. We have a pewter gray, nutmeg brown, and true green. And these are all just apple barrel paints. You can get them at like the dollar store, Walmart, like any craft store. Like most craft stores are probably gonna carry like the next step up, something a little bit better. So these are just simple acrylic craft paints. Next, we have some masking tape. I'll show you where that comes in a little bit later. We have our brush, which we're just going to wash and reuse for the different colors. But as far as everything goes, this was $1, this was $1, this I believe was $2, and these were each 50 cents each. And then our main performer is free. So let's get all of this out of the way for a minute. So first we're going to take our styrofoam and we're just going to kind of break it up into like a randomized land-shaped piece of mass. All right, I think that's a pretty good shape. Let's get a few more pieces going here. Keep in mind, don't get rid of any of these smaller pieces just yet. I'm going to show you a trick of something we can make with those as well that will add to this very same setup. So now we're going to start with these two pieces here, and you could just stop here, but I actually think I want at least one or both of them a little bit more of a dynamic terrain per se. So I'm going to break up a few pieces that will fit on top of them, and then we'll join those together before our next step. All right, so we got the baseline for a couple of pretty cool pieces here. Now let's clear off the table and I'll quickly show you how we'll prep these to join them together, and then we will get ready to do the next step. So now that we have our two pieces here, and I'll probably show some close-ups of kind of the overall shapes of them. Next, what we need to do is we want to prep the edges. Now this is going to do two things. This is going to help us attach our top piece to the bottom piece, as well as help the edges of these look more like cliff or stone. And that's where our masking tape comes in. So you're going to want to take this. This is just some cheap masking tape from, I think, Walmart. Now you're going to want to look along your edges here. Now on some different forms of styrofoam, it might look a way that you find appealing. This has a little bit of more of a pebbled look, but for what I'm going for, I think we're going to go ahead and use the tape. So all you need to do is just go along the edge. You can use your fingers, you can use your brush, and just make sure you knock anything loose. A couple little pieces off of there. Make sure you have no dust, no extra little hangies, no pieces that are just about ready to fly off, and get those all off of there. That way you have a clean edge that's ready for some masking tape. So now we're going to take this masking tape. I will That's everybody's favorite noise, right? So we're gonna take the masking tape and we are just going to apply it to the side. Now, the one thing I will say as far as tips go, I found it to work best to leave just a little bit of a lip coming over the top. We want it to make contact with the top so it's wrapping around the whole piece, but we don't want it to come too high because it will be a little bit of a visible definitive edge if we don't cover it well enough later. But from there, we are just gonna go around, and this doesn't need to be pretty, it doesn't need to be perfect. That's the awesome part about this. We are just making something cool that works. I like to stick it to the side first because that's where our point of contact is most important. And just squeeze it on there. Get it nice and squeezed on there. And if you're looking at it and it's starting to wrinkle and it's starting to crease and it's starting to look like it's kind of beat up, like there's some stuff going on in there, that's good. That's what we want. So I'm not sure how well you can see that. Maybe I'll throw a close-up on this as well, but we'll also see some close-ups of it later. But that's what we want to do. We just want to get it wrapped. You know, this is some pretty old stuff, so it's not wanting to stick too well to the bottom, but we'll take care of that later. Get it nice and wrapped, get it all the way around. We'll do that on all 4 pieces here, and then we'll cover the next step. One quick thing I will say is this stuff makes a mess, so be prepared for that. And there we have it. We have 2 pieces of terrain ready to be joined together, and then we're gonna prep them for the next step to get everything going. My only recommendation with this iteration that I'm making right now is don't use styrofoam that was used in like a window for an air conditioner or something, because something that the sun does to it really makes it not like to stick to the side that was outside. So, but that's fine. I might cheat a little later and throw like a little like Elmer's glue or something underneath that. We'll figure it out. But as long as you're using something from like some packaging or something that you've gotten recently, it really shouldn't be an issue. Now I'm gonna take these and run just a little bit of tape around some of these little spots, some of these little corners, and make it kind of part of that same side still, and attach the top pieces to the bottoms. And just for another state of reference, that's where we're at currently. Hopefully that's coming through. If not, there will either be some form of third piece that I do some close-ups on because I screwed up some of my filming order. But hopefully that comes through a little bit. You can kind of see what we're working with here. We have a little straggler here. Just take that off, smooth that down, and that corner's good to go. So yeah, remember, when you're doing this, it's supposed to look haggard and crinkly and ugly. Like, you want random. You want random when you're breaking it up. You want random when you're taping it, because the world is not uniform. So neither should this be. Not everything's made out of perfect squares. This is all about just taking something that is honestly terrible that we use so much and have around just because of its convenience, and turning it into something that serves you and is a better use of it than sitting somewhere taking 100 years to break down. So that piece is done. If your terrain is seeing more action than that, I would like an invitation to your games. All right, there they are, both pieces. So we're all ready to go. The next step, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take our black acrylic paint. We're gonna douse this on there and just coat these bad boys. We're gonna get rid of all the white we can see and get a nice dark coat. It doesn't need to be pretty, just try to make it as thoroughly covered as you possibly can. So we'll go through that step now and get these covered. If you start noticing any of your tape kind of peeling or pulling up in certain areas, or certain spots are just not wanting to stick or work because you're dealing with some stubborn styrofoam like I am, don't be worried. We can go back through and take care of any real problems right at the end and do a little bit of touch up. But for now, just get these coated. Don't be afraid to be pretty liberal with the paint in this step too, because some of this is actually going to help our pieces adhere together. It's going to help coat the tape and keep it stronger on the piece. And it's just good to make sure that you can do it all in one thick, heavy coat. That way you don't have to spend too much time on it. Now, when you get to a certain point where you might not be able to hold it, but you need to do some touch-ups, grab something like a cup you're not super in love with or too worried about, and just set it on there. It's styrofoam, so it weighs nothing. And we're beginning to have a pretty cool looking, and also don't be afraid to get your hands a little dirty. This is all about having fun, doing something creative, doing something that is also at the same time we can feel good about. So we are preventing any amount of landfill contributions today. All right, so there's our first one done. Paint's still wet, it's gotta dry, but as you can already see, I'm sure, now that we have it a different color, you can probably already see how it's gonna start to come together real quickly. Now I'm gonna get this other one painted real quick and then we'll move on to the next step. Does anybody else do that? Where when you're doing something that you're really focusing or paying attention to, does anybody have that like focus scrunch? I hate that I do it, but I catch myself doing it constantly my whole life. It's like anytime I'm like really like looking at something, I'm like, drives me nuts, but I can't help it. You might have the occasional piece of tape try to like kind of pop out from the wetness. Yeah, if you end up having a piece or two, don't be afraid to just use that brush to kind of shove it where it needs to go or somewhere that works. Because once that paint dries, that's really going to help bond it to the surface. A great thing about these craft paints is they wash off of stuff supremely easily. So, all right, there you have it. So, we're going to let these dry now. We have some beautiful black pieces of terrain. We're gonna let those dry. That's gonna take a little bit. Now, if you're at all worried that I'm about to tell you during this next step to use your artistic skills to paint beautiful dirt and grass on these, don't worry, that's not gonna happen. I have a great grass-like solution for you that you should be able to pretty much find anywhere. So we're gonna let these dry now, and I'm gonna wash up real quick, and then we'll pick back up with the next step. So if you don't have access to regular rocks, or you wanna use a mixture of large and smaller rocks for terrain, or you're just really enjoying this process, here is where we can utilize some of our scrap pieces. We can take these and break them up even further, use them as they are. The biggest thing you're gonna wanna do is each one of them, you're not gonna wanna leave this smooth top on it. So at the very least, you're gonna wanna take one of your pieces and you're gonna kinda just mess it up a little bit. Try to peel some of that layer off. So you end up with a little bit more of a bumpy ridge. We're gonna take that, we're gonna set that right on top of our other piece here. So we have something kind of like that stacked up there. I'll even go ahead and trim this up a little bit more so it works a little bit better. Get our heights. And I mean, this is, other than a mess, there's not a lot of difficulty here. It's just tearing up pieces of styrofoam. I mean, many of us have been doing it for years. So from there, we're gonna take this piece, and it's the same process as the edges. We're just gonna wrap it in tape, wrap it. Try to keep as many of your flat, straight edges towards the bottom as you can. Squeeze it. Compact it, give it wrinkles. Before you know it, this is gonna start looking very similar to a tannish cream colored piece of rock. I've even used these in tandem with real rocks to have a big variance in different sizes or have specific ones that could move. It was easier to have foam ones that move. We have our little boulder. It's gonna sit nicely on our terrain. It's wrinkled like stone. Now I have noticed what makes these look the best is if you don't leave much of a shelf between the two pieces. So like on our terrain pieces, for example, it comes up, it flattens out before it comes up again. You want that to be as minimal as possible on these. Otherwise, you'll really be able to tell it's two pieces put together. But if you can get these edges lined up, it really starts to create like a ground or rock-like substance. With these too, don't be afraid to go around it a few times and let the tape adhere to the tape and kind of really just turn this into a tape ball, a styrofoam rock. All right, so I have these three here. I'm not gonna make any more than that. I've made plenty in the past and kind of have a little stockpile of them. So for our grass and ground texture, we're actually just gonna take a quick step outside. Ooh, a little bright out here. We're literally just going to kneel down and grab, yes, some dirt. All right, so we have our two pieces here. They're just about dry. We're gonna go ahead and take our dirt now and turn it into grass and dirt, which is a really simple process, honestly. We're just gonna take this green here. Now make sure you have a little dirt sitting on the side in case you end up putting too much paint into this, because it can very easily become kind of a gluey-like substance. I've had it happen with all kinds of material where you get too much paint into it and suddenly you have a bunch of goop that without drying out a little bit, you can't do anything with. So, first things first, we're gonna take a little bit of dirt, sawdust, sand, whatever it is. We're gonna throw a little green in there. Just a little bit of drizzle. Then we're gonna take it and we're gonna mix it up. And we're gonna mix it up, mix it up, mix it up. And we're gonna be mixing this for a little while because the idea is we're going to try to tint all of this dirt we have to a green color. But like I said, we don't wanna get it too wet. We don't want it to clump up on us, and it's gonna clump up as you mix it and as you stir it. But as you continue to mix and stir it, the drier parts will break it up. And we just gotta keep going until we get a nice pile of green. So I'm just gonna keep pouring paint into this, mixing it, and getting what is usable out of it. I'll pick back up when we are done with that. And remember, we don't have to get everything green, just as we're trying to recreate in nature with these two pieces. Nowhere that you look is completely perfect. Nowhere has just X amount of any color, shape, anything like that to it. So remember, this is all about the randomness of nature being copied in our piece. All right, we have our dirt and grass mix nice and made up. Now we're ready for our next step. So the next step is going to be, we're going to take our brown and we're going to coat the flat spots of these in a nice hefty coating of the brown. This is not only going to serve as like an undertone to the dirt and disguising some of the black, so there's a little bit of brown, the green from both our material and on the piece itself. But also, we're gonna do both of these steps in tandem, because I could tell you to go buy spray glues or whatever kind of chemicals to apply to this, to stick this to it, but we can just apply a heavy coating of paint and our grass at the same time, and as those paints cure, they're going to adhere to the surface. There will be a little bit of a touch-up to do at the end, but I found this to actually be pretty effective. Okay, so now we're gonna apply our brown. We wanna put a nice coating on all of the flat edges, and it's okay if you go over and hit some of the sides of the stone and the cliff edge. You can hit more or less as you please. This will help give some of the mud look into the different pieces of rock after we dry brush that later. So we don't have to be super careful, but we don't wanna give a full coating to any of these edges, because this black is gonna help our rocks look a lot better in just a bit. All right, there we go. We have a nice wet coat of brown on our piece here. Now the next step is pretty easy. We want to make sure to do this while our brown is still nice and wet. Don't be afraid to pass back over and thicken it up if you need to. And then we're just going to take our dirt and we're just going to sprinkle it on there. Just sprinkle it on heavily. Don't be afraid to get it a little thick. We can collect what doesn't stick later and put it on the other piece when this piece is taken care of. Just keep putting it on there. Don't be afraid to put it in with your hands and kind of spread it out a little bit. Run your fingers along the side there. Don't be afraid if you have some wet paint on the sides to kind of throw it on the sides, wherever it will stick, you know, like moss and all those things grow all over. They're not dedicated to just one spot. Don't be afraid to just keep coating it, keep pressing it in, keep working it in there. Once you feel like you got it good, give it a few taps. Not too hard. We want to go ahead and leave it up to dry. But while we have plenty of green that's still wet, before I try to move things around and get any shots of any of these pieces, I'm gonna go ahead and coat this second one, and we're gonna get it all covered. And then from there, we can talk about some of the other things we can add to it and our last final steps to make these pieces themselves look really, really good. If you have any spots that are coming through too much, don't be afraid to just throw some extra on there, kind of pat it down. Leave it there while it dries and let what will stick to it stick. All right, now we just have some cleanup to do. This part of the process takes a while to dry, so we're gonna pick back up later today. We'll go over the last few steps that you can do that are optional that can really make this pop and become some dynamic terrain for your table. All right, so we had to pick this back up on a different day, but now we're gonna get ready to do the final touches on our pieces of terrain. But right before we do that, I have the boulders here, the rocks. I'm gonna do the same thing I did to the edges, coat these in a black. I have them on these little skewers because it makes them easy to paint, and also probably to expedite this process, I'll probably just like dry them really quickly with like my wife's hair dryer. And then we'll go through and we'll kind of put the stone texture, and from there we'll look at some shots of the terrain in action, as well as some cheap additions you can throw in to make this fully comparable to anything that you would spend 10 to 15 times more on. So without further ado, I'm gonna paint these up real quick, and then we'll get them dried. There you have it. There's our first boulder done. As you can see, it's got a ton of texture from that tape being around it and the styrofoam underneath it. I'm gonna paint these other two up real quick. We'll get them dried, and then we'll apply some stone textures. Just for reference, here's our second one. And our third one. So we're gonna get these dried up now, and then we'll come right back here and get the stone textures on. All right, we're ready to do the stone coloring on the edges of these pieces and on the boulders as well. It's a super easy process, so we're gonna get right into it. I'm just gonna take our gray paint and drop it down on whatever surface you have. I have a paper plate here that I use. You're gonna take a dry brush. That's our same brush from earlier we cleaned out. You're gonna get a little wet with paint just on the edges. So we're just dipping the edges in. We're gonna take that and just paint it onto like a napkin. I might have grabbed a little too much paint when I did. I'll just flip that over. I have a couple here. A little bit more than that. And once it starts to kind of more sparsely disperse the paint on the napkin, we're gonna take that and we're gonna kind of brush and flick into some of our areas on the black along the edges here. Now, when you're doing this, for the most part, unless you're finding an area that's tough to actually get into and get the paint onto, you really don't want to make those bristles bend at all. You want to keep them pretty straight, so it's just going to be some light touches. Something I am noticing with this piece, which was the second one that I did the taping and everything on, is I think I went a little quick when I was doing it, and certain parts of these edges are not as nice as others. It'll all still work and flow very well. Just remember to take your time, especially when you're doing something like this in a little bit more of a budget-friendly sense. Our attention to detail is really what's going to take it to that next notch. It's not a matter of difficulty, but a matter of intention. The bottom of this one definitely has a little better texture than that top section. And we'll do close-up of these all at the end, but it gives you a quick idea as we're working through this. So there's our first piece. I'll give you a little spin around. Like I said, we'll do close-ups, but that's the first one. We're gonna do this one now. This one has a little bit better of that defined edge, so it's probably gonna come out looking a little bit nicer, but we'll see here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and get it painted up, and then we will look at it for a second, and then talk about some of our other options for going even further. And like I said, no part of this process requires some kind of talented painter. We're relying on the randomness and lack of uniformity in nature to provide us with some connection to realism of our piece. But you'll see as all these colors and textures and different heights of things and materials kind of all come together, it really does work pretty well. I'm pretty happy with this idea. I love finding alternatives that not only save money, fit my needs better, but also are planet conscious. So it's a wonderful thing in my opinion. There we have the second one done. We're gonna let that dry. And then we will take a look at it again with a mat underneath it while we talk about some of the alternatives, as well as showing off some of the things that can quickly add to it. All right, now we're gonna do the boulders up real quick. So just take a quick second. We'll just run across these with a good brush here. And there's our first one taken care of there. Just a quick splash of paint on it. Some of that black's gonna show through, some of it's gonna come in through the cracks, but that's exactly what we want. That gives us depth, that gives us texture. It's following the same simple principles behind doing really good painting and just applying it in a less detailed scenario. There's another boulder there. Looking pretty good. And there's our third one. And now let's take a look at just these on the table and what they look like in action. So here we have the terrain pieces all by themselves. As you can see, it's already making our mat look more fun. And as we add in the boulders, a couple of minis, we now have a little bit more of a dynamic encounter to bring to the table. You can also do things like stacking them up and continuing to add to the different pieces to make your space even more dynamic. You can also take small little craft trees like these, which are honestly pretty budget friendly, as well as some simple moss textures like you see here, and with those, the boulders and the rocks, and as you begin to add it all together, you can really see how this all comes together to make a fun, dynamic battle map space for you and your players to add to the table. All for just a few bucks, really. Well, that just about wraps up today's video, but I'd love to know what you think and whether or not you'll give this idea a try, or if you just enjoyed following along in the process. Also, I had the consideration of maybe making this some form of series, like a trash to terrain series. So if you guys had interest in anything like that, definitely let me know down in the comments below, because I have all kinds of ideas I could delve into, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it if you guys aren't interested. Also, let me know if you have any kind of fun recycling or easy and simple DIY ideas you use to create terrain or extra things for your games. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and smack that subscribe button, as it helps the channel out a ton. And if you'd like to support me further, we do now have channel memberships here on the site. It helps a ton and goes towards making sure I can keep putting more of a full-time energy into this as is available. I look forward to hearing your comments and ideas, but for now, I got a game to get ready for. So thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next one.